Look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder. With this beautiful thought, good morning to all my dear students. I hope you all are in good health. I, Shreya Jadhav, welcome you all to my e learning channel. And today we are going to learn English Standard 9 Supplementary Reading 1 Moments. The first supplementary unit, The Lost Child, written by Mulkraj Anand. So, a child goes to a fair with his parents. He is happy and excited and wants the sweets and toys displayed there. But his parents don't buy them for him. Why then does he refuse when someone else's offers to him? So, over here, this is the summary of the chapter, we can say. So, let us start the reading of it. It was the festival of spring. From the wintry shades of narrow lanes, and alleys emerged in gaily clad humanity. Some walked, some rode on horses, others sat, being carried in bamboo and bullock carts. One little boy ran between his father's leg, brimming over with life and laughter. So, over here, it was a festival of spring, and all the people have gathered and they are really very happy. Some of them were walking, some of them were riding on the horses. On the other hand, some of the people were sitting down, and some were traveling in the bullock cart and bamboo carts. And over here, there was a little boy, and he was full of life and laughter, and he was running between the legs of his father. Come, child, come, called his parents as he lagged behind, fascinating by the toys in the shops that lined the way. He hurried towards his parents, feet obedient to their call, his eyes still lingering on the receding toys. As he came to where they had stopped to wait for him, he could not suppress the desire of his heart, even though he well knew the old, cold stare of refusal in their eyes. So, over here, the parents are calling the child that please come over here, because the parents were waiting for the child, and the child was constantly and continuously looking. He was really very fascinated, attracted towards the toy shop, and then he quickly hurried, no changing his direction of attention, because he was really very obedient. Whatsoever the parents told, he used to follow it. So he directly went where his parents were waiting for him, but still he was continuously looking behind as if he wanted the toys from the shop. He knew that he could not suppress the desire from his heart, but he also knew that his parents would not allow him to buy those toys. I want that toy, he pleaded. His father looked at him red eyed, means he looked very angrily in his familiar tyrant way. His mother, melted by his free spirit of the day, and was tender, and giving him her finger to hold, said, look, child, what is before you? It was flowering mustard field, pale like melting gold, as it swept across the miles and of even land. So what happened over here? His father gave a really very angry look, but the mother just tried to drag the attention of the child, and the mother told that, see, look, child, look over here. This yellow mustard flowering seed looks so beautiful, and it seems like a melting gold. A group of dragonflies were bustling out on their gaudy purple wings, intercepting the flight of a lone black bee or butterfly in search of sweetness from the flowers. The child followed them in the air with his gaze, till one of them would still its wings and rest, and he would try to catch it, but it would go fluttering, flapping up into the air. When he had almost caught it in his hands, then his mother gave him a cautionary call. Come, child, come, come on the footpath. Now, as they were passing through this flowering mustard field, yes, it looked like a melting gold. Now, as they were passing by through the field, they saw that there were group of dragonflies who were bustling around, and they were having a gaudy purple wings. So now this child was behind those black bee and the butterfly. He wanted to catch those, and as they were fluttering, he ran behind the butterflies and the bees. And at that time duration, his mother again calls the child that, come, child, come, come on the footpath, we are waiting for you. He ran towards his parents gaily and walked abreast of them for a while, being, however, soon left behind, attracted by little insects and worms. Along the footpath, there were teeming out from their hiding places to enjoy the sunshine. So, when his parents were calling the child, he was really very happy and he walked very fast, but still he was left behind them. Why? Because now he was attracted towards those little insects and worms who were lying down, or they were at the edge of the footpath. So the child was now attracted towards those new creatures. Come, child, come, his parents called from the shade of grove, where they had seated themselves on the edge of a wall. He ran towards them. So now the parents were sitting on one of the grove, and they were sitting on the edge of the well. And at that time duration, the parents called him and he moved towards the parents. A shower of young flowers fell upon the child as he entered the grove, and forgetting his parents, he began to gather the raining petals in his hands. But lo, he heard the cooing of doves and ran towards his parents, shouting, The dove, the dove! The raining petals dropped from his forgotten hands. So now what happened when he went near the well where the parents were sitting, and he saw that there were plenty of raining petals. So he started collecting those. But after a certain time duration, he saw that there was a dove. So he was really very excited to see the bird, the dove. So he started shouting to his parents that, listen, see, here there is a dove. And when he was shouting, screaming with excitement, at that time duration, he forgot. And the petals, the raining petals which were there in his hand, he dropped it and he forgot that he was holding the petals. Over here we can come to know that the child was really very happy, excited and enjoying the we can say the spring fair where the parents have taken him. Come, child, come, they called to the child, who had now gone running in the wild capers round the banyan tree, and gathering him up, they took the narrow, winding footpath which led to the fair through the mustard field. Now, again, the parents are calling the child, and now they are running around the banyan tree, and they have gathered up in some narrow place, and now they are supposed to move to the fair. As they neared the village, the child could see many other footpaths, full of throngs converging to the whirlpool of the air, and felt at once repelled and fascinated by the confusion of the world he was entering. So now, when he got near to the village, he could see so many people, because in fair we have so many and plenty of people, and everyone were moving around in the fair, and now he was really much fascinated by looking at so many people. Yes, and he thought that now he is entering into a different world. A sweet meat seller hawked gulab jamun, rasgulla, burfi, jalebi at the corner of the entrance, and the crowd pressed round his counter. At the foot of an architecture of many colored sweets decorated with leaves of silver and gold, the child stared open eyed, and his mouth watered for the burfi. That was his favorite sweet. I want that burfi, he slowly murmured. But he half knew, as he begged, that his plea would not be heeded because his parents would say he was greedy. So, without waiting for an answer, he moved on. So, now he has entered into the fair. This is the first place where he is stopping, and that was at the sweet meat seller hawker. And over there, there were so many different items of sweets like gulab jamun, rasgulla, burfi, and jalebi. And so number of people were standing over there, and they were waiting for their turn to come. The sweets were of many colors, and they were decorated with silver and gold. And moreover to that, the child was also opened eye, and now he was having that craving of no eating that burfi. Why specifically burfi? Because burfi was the favorite sweet, and the child very slowly he murmured and he said that I want that burfi. He said that he was willing to have one burfi, but he almost knew that his request, his plea, would not be heeded because his parents would say that he was really very greedy. So, without waiting for the answer, that he knew that his parents are going to refuse only, he moved on. A flower hawked, a flower seller hawked, a garland of gulmohar, a garland of gulmohar. The child seemed irresistibly drawn. He went towards the basket where the flowers lay heaped and half murmured, I want that garland, but he well knew his parents would refuse to buy him those flowers because they would say that they were cheap. So without waiting for answer, he moved on. Now the second shop where he is waiting is that of a flower seller hawker, and over there the hawker was selling that a garland of gulmohar, and now the child was very much fascinated towards those colors of gulmohar. So he went near the basket and he saw that how beautiful the flowers were, and he murmured out that he wanted a garland, but he also knew that his parents are going to refuse him, and they would tell him, they would give him an excuse that as the flowers are really very cheap, we should not purchase it. So he didn't waited for any sort of answer and he moved on. A man stood holding a pole with yellow, red, green, and purple balloons flying from it. The child was simply carried, attracted away by the rainbow glory of their silken colors, and he was filled with an overwhelming desire to possess them all. But he knew well his parents would never buy him the balloons because they would say he was too old to play with such toys. So he walked on further. So what happened? There was, now this is the third incident which that little child is sharing, that a man was standing with a pole and there were different colors of balloons that were flying. So now the child was simply attracted towards those rainbow glory and the silken colors, and now he was overwhelming that desire. He was really much excited, he wanted those balloons, but he knew that if he would tell the parents to let him get a balloon, the parents would tell that now he is big enough and he should not play with those sort of balloons, and such toys are really very old. So then he didn't ask for anything and he just walked away from there. A snake charmer stood playing a flute to a snake which coiled itself in a basket, its head raised in a graceful bend like the neck of swan, while the music stole into its invisible ears like the gentle rippling of an invisible waterfall. The child went towards the snake charmer, but knowing his parents had forbidden him to hear such chorus music as the snake charmer played, he proceeded farther. So, this is the next incident which he is sharing, that he met a snake charmer and he was playing a flute. So, the snake which coiled itself in a basket. Now, the child went towards that snake charmer, but he knew that his parents had told no, not to listen to that sort of music which the snake charmer was playing. So he just moved away from there. There was a roundabout in full swing. Men, women, and children, carried away in a whirling motion, shrieked and cried with dizzy laughter. The child watched them intently, and then he made a bold request. I want to go on the roundabout. Please, father, mother. So the roundabout is a merry-go-round, and it was in a full swing. All the people were in a whirling motion, and everybody were having a dizzy laughter. Now the child also watched that thing intently, and now at this time he made a bold request and he told that please allow me to go. I also want to go to the roundabout. He requested his parents to give him permission. There was no reply. He turned to look at his parents. They were not there, ahead of him. He turned to look on either side. They were not there. He looked behind. There was no sign of them. So now, when the child turned behind at that time, he realized that his parents were not there. So there was no reply from either of the parents. They might have moved ahead. And because of this thing, he looked each and everywhere, but it was not possible for him to search. And there was no sign. A full deep cry rose within his dry throat, and with a sudden jerk of his body, he ran from where he stood, crying in real fear, Mother, Father! Tear rolled down his eyes, hot and fierce. His flushed face was convulsed with fear. Panic stricken, he ran to one side first, then to the other, hither and thither, in all the directions, knowing not where to go. Mother, father, he wailed. His yellow turban came untied and his clothes became muddy. Now, what happened when he saw that there was no sign of his parents? He was full. Now, he was overwhelmed with the emotions and he started crying. And he was having a dry throat because he started crying. And then he called out, Mother and Father. Tears started rolling down his eyes. He was really very panicked and he ran at the one side of the street and then he went to the other side. And he was really very worried about from where he could get his parents. And at that time duration, the boy was wearing a yellow turban which came untied and his clothes have become really very muddy. Having run to and fro in a rage of running for a while, he stood defeated, his cries suppressed into sobs. At little distances on a green grass he could see, through his filmy eyes, men and women talking. He tried to look intently among the patches of bright yellow clothes, but there was no sign of his father and mother among those people who seemed to laugh and talk just for the sake of laughing and talking. Now, what happened? He started sobbing, and after a certain time duration, he saw that the green grass he could see so many men and women talking, laughing, and there were patches of bright yellow clothes, but there was no sign of his father and mother among those people. and they all were laughing and talking, but now he was really very worried to find his parents. He ran quickly again, this time to a shirin to which people seemed to be crowding. Every little inch of space where he was congested with men, but he ran through people's leg, his little sob lingering. Mother, father. Near the entrance to the temple, however, the crowd became very thick. Men jostled each other, heavy men with flashing, murderous eyes and hefty shoulders. The poor child struggled to thrust a way between their feet, but knocked to and fro by their brutal movements. He might have been trampled underfoot. He had not shrinked at the highest pitch of his voice. Mother, father, a man in a shrugging crowd here heard his cry and, stopping with great difficulty, lifted him in his arms. So, now what happened? He quickly ran. There was a group standing at the shirin, and everyone were standing, and there was very little space, but somehow the child managed to move between the feet of the people, and everybody, the men were jostling at each other. They were really very heavy men, and moreover to that, their eyes were very murderous, and they were having hefty shoulders. So the child struggled a lot, but he somehow managed to move ahead. And when he went down, he shouted at his highest pitch of voice, and he said, Father, mother. And over there, a man was standing in the crowd, and he heard the child's cry. And he stopped him with great difficulty and tried to lift him up in his arms. How did you get here, child? Whose baby are you? The man asked as he stirred clear of the mass. The child wept more bitterly than ever now and only cried, I want my mother, I want my father. So that man lifted the child and he asked that how did you get over here? How have you reached over here? And whose baby are you? Where are your parents? And this made the child even cry more bitterly. And he told that I want my mother, I want my father. The man tried to soothe him by taking him to a roundabout. Will you have a ride on the horse? He gently asked as he approached the ring. The child's throat tore into 1,000 shrill sobs, and he only shouted, I want my mother, I want my father. Now, as the child was crying really badly, the man took him to the roundabout and he told that would you like to ride on a horse? But the child almost shouted in a shrill and sobbed and said that he only wanted his mother and father. Dear students, you can see the picture over here of the fair, and you can see over here in the middle that little child is crying and the man is asking if he wanted to go anywhere. The man headed towards the place where the snake charmer still played on the flute to swaying cobra. Listen to that nice music, child, he pleaded. But the child shut his ears with his fingers and shouted his double-pitched strain, I want my mother, I want my father. So now that gentleman told that look, the snake charmer is playing such a nice flute, listen to it. But he shut down his ears and he shouted that he wanted his parents. The man took him near the balloons, thinking the bright colors of the balloons would distract the child's attention and quieten him. Would you like a rainbow colored balloon? He persuasively asked. The child turned his eyes from the flying balloons and just sobbed. I want my mother, I want my father. So now this good-hearted gentleman asked him that was he willing to get a rainbow colored balloon. and the child eventually wanted also at initial stage, but just now he was not wanting anything. He didn't want anything. Why? Because just now he only wanted one thing, and that was the parents. So he turned away his eyes and he told that no, I don't want any sort of balloons, I want my parents back. The man, still trying to make the lost child happy, bore him to the gate where the flower seller said, "Look, can you smell those nice flowers, child? Would you like a garland to put around your neck?" Okay, now you can see that in the second incident, when the child was entering the fair, at that time he wished to have those gulmohar garland, and now this gentleman was offering that garland, but now the child was refusing, that he didn't want that garland. The child turned his nose away from the basket and reiterated his sob, "I want my mother, I want my father." Thinking to humor his disconsolate charge by the gift of sweets, the man took him to counter of the sweet shop. "What sweets would you like, child?" he asked. The child turned his face from the sweet shop and only sobbed, "I want my mother, I want my father." So, when he was entering the fair the first time, he wished and he was thinking that if his parents could buy him the sweet, and his favorite sweet was burfi. This gentleman took him over to the sweet shop and he told that which sweet would you like to have, and now even the child turned his face from the sweet shop and he only started crying. And just now he didn't want any sort of sweets or gulmohar garland or balloons or whereabouts. He only wanted one thing, and that was his mother and father. So, this is the chapter written by Mulkaraj Anand. I hope, dear students, that you all have understood the chapter. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.